and welcome back to Genesis Designs and Modelcraft, and today I've got another quick look review, and this is the brand newly tooled Special Hobby Mosquito PR16 in 1/72 scale. I have not had this out of the bags yet. I have had a look in the box, but I haven't had it out of the bags yet, and I am honestly a little bit excited to have a look at it. And it's a while since I've felt that way about looking at a new kit, oddly. Picked this up from Havilland just to bulk out an order the other week. Price here in the UK is going to be around the £25 mark for this kit, so it's comparable with the price that you're paying for the Airfix kit of the same type. So let's see what we actually get in this box and how it might compare to the Airfix kit, which, as you know, I have built. Okay, everything neatly packaged in one big bag. The peel and stick ones. And we have a decal sheet, some transparencies, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sprues. Let's have a look at these in turn then. First off the pile, Sprue A. And it's recognisably Special Hobby or modern Special Hobby. They're quite well moulded, they're quite clean, but at the same time they do generally exhibit a little bit more in the way of surface irregularities than a mainstream kit will. They are still sort of semi-short run technology. You can see that in these fuselage halves in the surface. Now, if in the light you can see just a little, almost like scratches and marks in the surface. So the fin is moulded into the fuselage, and you can see that the leading edge is missing on this side because it's moulded into this one. Separate rudder. We also have the nacelle halves on here, fronts of the engines, and we've got exhausts which do have a decent amount of flash on them. So the nose is separate here, so it's going to be much easier for Special Hobby to make other versions of the aircraft available later on down the road, simply by moulding a different sprue for the noses, so we could have a fighter version and all the various radar armed equipped versions too. We have the 2-stage Merlin nacelles in this kit, clearly. And they exhibit some vertical sink marks which are located where this surface detail is on the inside. Again, if I hold that in the light, you should be able to see those. That kind of thing on a kit of a metal skinned aircraft wouldn't really bother me, because they do tend to have ripples and bumps where the structure is, but on wooden aircraft it isn't really a thing. So I would be inclined to use something like Mr. Surfacer and just give that a sand and get rid of those. So that's the first one. The next one up, coincidentally enough, is the sprue with the nose pieces on it. We also have bomb bay doors here, a set with camera apertures and a set without. Pair of doors for the area where the armament sits, with the cannon shell ejection apertures, cannon nose, cockpit floor, and then the actual nose pieces for this. This is a bomber nosed aircraft as a reconnaissance bird. It's got the clear glazed nose. It's ice cream o'clock again. There's the internal detail. Not really much to speak of, but these were smooth on the inside as well as on the outside. Next up, Sprue D. This one's got lots of incidental parts on it. We've got drop tanks. Three different types of drop tanks. A long-nosed small tank, a short-nosed small tank, and a much bigger type of tank. We've got internal parts, exhaust shrouds, and any number of small detail bits and pieces. There's the pilot's seat. I'll show you the instrument panel. It's quite nicely done. As are these exhaust covers. And there is the pilot's seat with its armour. And we have Sprue F. So it's got the cowling panels. Now going back, yes, I didn't even notice at the time, or I did but I didn't say anything, one or the other, but the cowling panels are not actually moulded into these. They're separate parts which are here, and there are two different types again. Propellers and spinners, you've got narrow blade propellers and the paddle blade style. There's a tail wheel here. It's all internal parts. There's even a radar dish, which I don't think we'll use on this version. And wheels. The wheels are in halves, but the detail on them is really rather nice. The biggest issue with them being in halves like this is that it's kind of inevitable that some or all of that tyre tread detail will get lost on the joint when you clean it up, which is slightly frustrating, but tyres do get worn out in use, so it doesn't need to be a deal breaker really. Next up, this sprue doesn't seem to have a letter attributed to it, it just says DH98 Mosquito on it. And this is lots of detail pieces. You can see the main undercarriage legs here, which are very nicely done. They're very crisp, very sharply moulded. Various parts which are no doubt for the nacelles and interior, and indeed the bomb bay, I suspect. I think these are probably radio sets for the cockpit. And these are what I think are the oil tanks that sit at the top of the undercarriage legs by the looks of them. But we'll suss that out when we look at the instructions. It's all very crisp and very nicely moulded. And the last one, this is Sprue B, and clearly this has the wings on it. The main wings then are in upper and lower halves, very conventional. They've got some raised detail over in the cowlings and the panelling above the radiators. The elevators have raised rivets moulded onto them. And there's just generally some sort of raised panelling and sort of rib detail sprinkled around the place. The wheelbase have got some nice representation of a bit of pipework. And there's some really good depth on this outlet area for the radiators. I do have separate flaps as well. Separate flaps and separate ailerons. There are also two types of tailplane, one with the slightly enlarged surface area elevators. It's all very, very nicely done. It's quite sophisticated looking. Exceptionally good when you consider the scale as well. The undersides. And raised riveting on the elevators. Very, very nice. A little bit of flash, a little bit of unevenness in the moulding here and there, but overall looks to be a good level of detail and some very nice little touches. Now here we have the transparencies, and this is interesting. All kinds of things going on. We have 3 different main canopies here. There's a fighter canopy here with the flat windscreen. Then there are 2 bomber canopies, which by bomber I mean with the V-shaped windscreen, less drag. One has a big observation blister, one does not. Then there are side windows in various different types as well. Wingtips, complete wingtips. So you've got the variant with double navigation lights and with just the forward ones. Various rounded porthole windows, hatches, the nose transparency. This is the radar nose for the NF30. And I don't know, I think these are bulged bomb bay doors with the windows moulded in for the cameras. 2 different versions of that as well. It's very comprehensive. The framing on these canopies looks quite intrusive visually, but doesn't feel too bad. Clarity could be better. It's good enough, but I've certainly seen better. Okay, put these straight back in because that fighter canopy wants to make a bid for freedom. We'll look at the decals later. And here are the instructions. So this is a bigger instruction booklet. History in English at the top and Czech underneath. Initially then, just the sprue layouts, and there are a lot of parts here marked not for use. I get the sense with this kit that if you know your way around a Mosquito well enough, you can build a lot more than the variant noted on the box, as long as you've got the right boxing with the nose that you need, that is. Obviously you can't build a single stage aircraft when you've got twin stage nacelles, but there's a lot of good bits for the spares box here. Colour call outs are guns, Mr. Hobby, Mr. Colour. And then getting into it, I very much like the way these are drawn. The style of this drawing is, I like it. Noting which way to paint the ident lights there, which is nice. Quite a bit of detail to add to the sidewalls of the fuselage, and the cockpit area itself looks pretty decent from the box. A couple of sets of seat belts would really finish it off. That's the Bombay door arrangement for this kit there. Adding the rudder, adding the tail wheel. Then we build the wings. So you insert the radiator faces into the leading edges and then put them together. There's an option to drill for tanks, and a very good explanation here which particular holes to drill for either tanks or bomb racks and exact sizes. No, there is no notation of the drill size to use though. There's the undercarriage legs going together down there. And still going together. It's quite a complex undercarriage assembly. They go into the wings and then we build the nacelles around them. This is the kind of thing where I would be doing test fitting and test building ahead of time, because I don't like having to do things like this around pre-built, somewhat fragile areas. Not to mention as well that the seam line along the bottom of the carburettor intake here, that ends directly immediately next to these undercarriage legs, so it will be very difficult to deal with this properly if it can only be done with this undercarriage assembly in situ. So this is the kind of thing where I would be building the undercarriage but not finally fixing it into the wing until I've ascertained whether or not I can build this first and then slot the legs in later. Potentially won't be possible with the way this assembly is laid out, because I know on the Airfix version you have to spring the back end of this in quite a lot to get it in. But we shall see. Then we add flying controls, the outlet doors for the radiator and the undercarriage doors. A little annotation here, maximum flap angle of 45 degrees, and you can do the radiator outlet closed or open. Propellers and exhausts, canopies, and finally the tanks. Long range tanks, you can have either version there. And it's also saying you can fit bomb racks if you prefer. Okay, pretty straightforward build then for the most part, by the looks of it, as long as everything fits together nicely. And we don't get to find out what those giant clear parts are, but I think they are just Bombay panels for different versions. So by the looks of it, there will be quite a few versions of this kit incoming. And why not? Onto the schemes then. Quite, again, a nice selection. This one, 544 Squadron, Royal Air Force Benson, summer 1944. PRU blue with extensive invasion striping. Like the Airfix kit, the artists here have drawn the tanks in black to match the striping on the wing. When I built the Airfix kit, I couldn't find any photos that really showed that being the case, but by all means, when building these kits, check for yourselves. This is also pointing out areas of what could be fresh paint that are coming up in different colours, which is a nice touch. That's Scheme A. Scheme B, 60 Squadron, South African Air Force. This is a very colourful one, another quite well known one. PRU blue again, with invasion stripes, a candy stripe fin and yellow spinners. Third one, 684 Squadron RAF, operating out of Dum Dum in India, late 1944. This one is entirely painted in aluminium dope, with the South East Asia Command markings and dark blue ID bands. I absolutely love this scheme, and this is definitely the one that I will finish this model in, 100%. Next up, the scheme that I already did on the Airfix kit. Although the Airfix kit didn't include a nose arts, this may have been a slightly different aircraft but from the same unit, with the red tail. '25th Bomb Group, US Army Air Force, Watton, UK, 1944 to 45. Then we have 87 Squadron, Royal Australian Air Force at Morotai, August 1945. This is again overall PRU blue, but with the Australian markings on it, and a sanded down fin leading edge. It says here one side has received fresh PRU blue and the other side sanded down to bare plywood. Interesting. With the note that undercarriage legs and wheels are also PRU blue. And the final one, another 87 Squadron aircraft. This aircraft took off on the last combat mission of 87 Squadron during the Second World War. It was actually recalled home as the war ended just after it took off. Same scheme, Australian markings again. And then there's a few adverts. Building the Mosquito kit can be made easier if you use the mask M72061. You can also improve your model with our resin and 3D printed sets. And they are exhausts, mask set, some crew figures, a trolley ack which could be used on so many different aircraft, any RAF aircraft, and in fact many foreign air forces would have used these. A little battery pack for starting aircraft. Nice addition. A dinghy box and the main wheel set, which we will look at in a moment because I do have it here. Here's the NF30, also just been released. I went for this version even though I've already built one because I found the schemes inside more appealing than these. That's just a personal preference thing. And on the back some other products. DC2 wheels for Hawkeye and Ferry Battle, Havoc Mark 1, Night Intruder, Tempest parts, bicycles, all kinds of stuff. Some really good stuff coming out of Special Hobby just now. Decals over here then. Another peely bag. Let's see if I can do this without wrecking it. There we go. Phew. So first off then, there's a little addendum. It says Bosco's bus. This was applied to one of the Australian aircraft post-war. Which one was it? I did read it. It's this last one. It had 4 reconnaissance mission symbols on the nose, which are painted on camera icons. These were overpainted and Bosco's bus was painted on shortly after the end of the war, it says. And here we are, the now typical Special Hobby / Edward decals. I think you all know my stance on these by now, but if you don't, I'll go ahead and repeat it all anyway. These do have beautifully thin and beautifully tapered carrier film. And as such, if you can get them off the sheet and onto the model sufficiently well, they will disappear really, really easily, whether you remove the film or not. You do not have to remove the film on these. This particular sheet does suffer from the rather unfortunate lack of colour density, which does pop up relatively frequently with these decals, I find. They look sort of slightly dotty and they're just weak. The colours are weak. I do not think Australian roundels are as bright as that. And they have this almost slightly fuzzy appearance to them. In practice, in some instances anyway, this slight weakness of colour actually doesn't look bad on the model. The decals can sort of blend into the finish a bit more than if they were very bright, vibrant colours. There's a few here as well where they've provided options. You have it with the F's for the red tail and these serials here, and indeed Bosco's bus, where they've provided the option of a sort of an area of paint for the colour that was already there, but it doesn't look like it would really match the PRU blue I use in any of those 3 cases. We've got all sorts of stencils. We do have an instrument panel decal down here, and a choice of red or black stencils across the board. There's a whole set in red and a whole set in black. That's a nice enough sheet, and I think for the scheme that I would do, it doesn't look too bad actually. But there you go, that is what you're going to get in the box. It's one of those where it's probably worth, if you're shopping at your local hobby store, just having a quick look in the box. Obviously you're not going to take things out of the bags, but just have a quick look at the sheet, make sure it's not stuck to the bag or anything silly like that. So you're going to destroy your sheet trying to get it out of the pack, and try to see that you haven't got one of these really badly faded looking ones, because you don't want to have to budget for a fresh decal sheet right out the box. Put these away. Okay, so whilst I was at Havilland's last picking up some parts for the 2-seat Spitfire build, I also grabbed these, and this is the specific wheel set for this Mosquito kit. Includes a pair of main wheels and a tail wheel leg, as you can see, and this cost £5.60, as you can see there. And I made an order. It was too small to post, so to get it was just for 2 sets of seat belts for the Spitfire TR9 build. To get the order up to a price where Havilland were willing to send it, I had to add something, and I thought, well, why not get this set and see if it's any good, you know? So that's what I did. And the answer to that question is yes, but also no. So you get a pair of resin main wheels here, and then they are standard resin, these are not 3D printed. And the wheels themselves are very nice, the tyres anyway, right here they are. You've got no worries with removing the tread during prep, and you've got the anti-shimmy tail wheel and tyre as well. These, to my eye, look a little bit overly flat maybe. They bulge out just maybe a touch too much perhaps, but then again, fully fueled and armed up aircraft, maybe not. I have separate hubs, which eases painting somewhat. And there's what they look like. And you also get a fresh tail wheel. Now let me find the plastic part. Tail wheel strut. So the plastic part for this is on frame sprue F. Here it is. And in fairness, it looks pretty decent. The only real issue with it is because it's moulded in with the tyre in situ, it doesn't look like two separate parts. In either case, in the second half of the tyre, just has the bottom part of the strut on it. So that's the kit part. Here we've got a fanfare, we've got 3D printed parts, new tail wheel leg, very nice. Problem is, how many times have you looked at a 3D printed part and thought, my god, that's so small and so fine, it must be very fragile. And yes they are very fragile, so fragile in fact that this one, through interacting with these heavy resin wheels whilst in the container, both of the forks of the tail wheel leg have snapped clear off. So this part is not usable. I did have both of them, but one of them's gone now. It doesn't matter because I'm not going to do it. Both of the pieces are in there. In theory, I suppose you could glue them back on, but all that's going to happen is that you're going to lose your tail wheel with boring regularity, as these just snap again if you ever just move the model or breathe near it. So that's very unfortunate. But the wheels and tyres are quite nice. If only because they're going to be easier to paint, there's no masking required or fiddly brush painting, and you can have that full tread, no loss of detail through preparation. Whether they're worth an extra £5 is going to be a personal choice, but right here and now I would say probably not. And the fact that the tail wheel leg is included is probably mostly irrelevant, because if mine's broken, most of them probably are. So that's the extra set. Okay then, overall I think this looks like a very, very nice kit. It's clearly more detailed, well, there is more detail to be had here than the Airfix kit. It isn't really any more complicated to put together by the looks of it. There's greater moulding finesse in the small detail parts, there's greater detail in those small parts. There are a plethora of spare things if you're going to build several mosquitoes, or if you have several planned. This probably isn't a bad one to get hold of, because there's lots of little odds and sods in here that could be used on other builds. And based purely on my experience of other modern special hobby kits, I think it will probably go together pretty well. I do think, despite the sort of minor issues with decal sheet quality and the odd bit of flash here and there, it does to me seem to be worth what they're asking for it, when you consider that the Airfix kit costs just as much and isn't as detailed or as crisp or as finely produced as this is. So yeah, I think it looks a good buy. I think it looks a good kit for the money. And I'm actually quite glad that I accidentally bought it, because I had to make my Hannon's order a bit bigger. And there you have it. So thanks as always, thank you very much for watching. Thanks for your support. I hope you've enjoyed the video, and with all of that said, I think it only remains for me to say, until next time, look after yourselves, look after each other, and Genesis out.